Hello everyone. This latest vid is going to be called "How many times should you breed a female?" It's a question I was asked, and once again, nothing meant for illegal purposes, nothing intended for legal purposes. This is all history, information, knowledge, entertainment. First, I'd like to say I got this jacket. It's a rain jacket sent to me by my good friend, the coach, and it's In Cahoots Kennels. It's nice, man. It's in fact, it's so nice. I think my grandson Jesse's gonna steal it from me. He wants to use it to when he goes to the gym and train for boxing. Winter's coming up, so it'll serve him well because they do running sometimes at the gym. They go outside the gym. If it's raining, this will be perfect. Run with this, but it's nice. It's got a lining in it, so it helps to keep you warm. And when you zip it up, it's got magnets that make sure it stays closed. So thank you, Coach. It's a fine jacket. So that's a good question. How many times should you breed a female? Simple answer is many times as you want. But you know, I had standards for everything, and even concerning the females, how many times I bred them. There's a lot of factors, in my opinion, in my experience, and the way I like to do things that played into it. So these things always matter to me: age, youth, vitality, constitution, soundness. Age, of course, I mentioned it before. I don't like breeding old dogs. I just don't. Nature doesn't do it, so I don't do it. But again, what age do you start? You know, vitality meaning a lot of spirit. Constitution meaning, constitution is like the, how would I put it? It's like the, not the horsepower on a car, but the, you know, the, anyways, people know. I'll put it in the comments. You know what I'm talking about. Constitution is built over time, and you should have dogs, you know, when you start off with, that have that good constitution, meaning you should know the background of your dogs. A lot of that has to do with the bone structure, has to do with the structure itself, muscle, their physique, mentality, meaning a willingness to work. Again, I like dogs with a lot of spirit, a lot of eagerness, intelligence. Should be a go-get-em girl, if you want to put it like that. You know, soundness, the way I use it is, you know, we checked all our dogs, male, female. Some breeders don't check the females like they do the males. Some people just, back in the day, they just looked at them a little bit. Some didn't look at them at all. They weren't concerned with that. But it was important to me to make sure everything was worthy, in my opinion. That's where I get that soundness. It's kind of a horse racing term. One horse racing guy, thoroughbred horse racing breeder, said he liked soundness in his females, meaning he had to see them run on the track. Because in a lot of, whether it's horses or hound dogs, whatever, some breeders didn't do much with their females. They're only interested on breeding them, what they can produce. But I had to see everything in all my dogs. And of course, with game fowl, they didn't fight the females, the hens. But even some of them, they will fight. They'll see their vitality and spirit, structure, all that matters. How their wings fall, their legs, all that stuff matters on a female. Big ones, little ones, different sizes, all different choices that you can have when you're talking about producing animals that you're going to use for breeding purposes. So at what age did I start? The earliest I started breeding females was 1.5 years. A lot of them come into heat when they're 6 months old. And generally, if a female is regular, they'll come into heat every 6 months. To me, that's too young. Even 1 year is too young. 1.5 years, they're getting up there. And most of mine were closer to 2 years. So by their first, second, third, fourth heat, third or fourth heat, that's when I would begin to breed mine. And I didn't breed them at 1.5 years until I had 3 or 4 generations of my own family of dogs. And I knew everything about them, knew what to expect, and I could choose my preferences over that. And I did that with 2 sisters, 2 littermate sisters. And I bred them to the same male, Champion K and Bambi. Bred to Mr. Rowdy. And what I did was I looked at them one time, bred them, finished them out, and later on they went to have a competition career in other people's hands, because that was the point that I had to get rid of my dogs. So Joey got Kay, made her a champion, him and Mike, and Frankie got Bambi, 2-time winner. So another thing I looked for was females that had a regular heat cycle. Now I had one, an inbred daughter of Jeep, that only came into heat once a year. She was the only female I had like that. Could have been due to her inbreeding, as I mentioned in the other video. The more you breed, the more you inbreed, the less chance you have of big litters, and it could affect their heat cycles. Because if you can inbreed anything, any species, to its extinction. Now that's not 100% true. I'm sure people are going to say, I had an inbred dog and she had 10 pups. Okay, that happens. But with mine, because I tight line bred them, real close to inbreeding on some of them. In fact, I bred Big Red to his granddaughter, so you could call that an inbreeding. Several litters were not that big. One litter I had 1 pup. A couple of litters I had 2 pups. A few litters I had 4 pups. One litter I had 11 pups. With the line breedings, more loose line breeding, I got anywhere from 6 to 8 pups. So I think it's important for them to have regular heat cycles. It speaks to the health, speaks to the constitution, it speaks to consistency. You start having these funny heat cycles, you start having problems like that. A lot of people just breed dogs based on pedigree, or I want to breed it, got to get something off of it. To me, that's where the age comes in too, once they start getting too old. For me. And again, you're going to get people that say, no, it's the same. They still throw good, this and that. Well, my question always is, did you breed them when they were 2 years old? Most of the time, no. 3 years old, no. I waited till their career was over. I got her as an older bitch. Okay, that means you have nothing to compare it to. If you got good dogs out of an 8-year-old bitch, you might have got better ones when she was 3 years old. I think that's changing a little bit. I changed that back in the day. Other people started doing that too. My attitude was, why wait? What are you waiting for? I think a lot of times, they're waiting if they breed them young and then they quit later or they lose later, whatever it is, it's embarrassing to them. Well, that happened to me one time. I had a female, won best in show with her. She lost to a champion. She never quit, but she kept scratching, but she just couldn't take the pain. I just ended it. I didn't keep her. Didn't keep her sisters. Never bred to her daddy again. And I didn't keep her pups because I had bred her. And her pup, one of them I used, he went on to beat a so-called killer, and I saw him finish the dog, but he was a good dog, and he won. Great victory, but I still didn't keep him. I just didn't want that in my blood. And there were other reasons I got rid of that stuff too. Not only could they not take pain, they weren't durable enough. They had a lot of speed and good mouth. Several of them bit hard, but Just not good enough. So that's one thing you could do. But there's too many times, and you hear it all the time, that people losing dogs for whatever reason, accidentally or on purpose. They didn't get nothing off of them because they waited too long. It's an old mental way of thinking. Wait till their career is over. Same with males, and it just never made sense to me. So that's where that youth comes in for me, because it just makes sense. Vitality, youth, high spirit, you get that, even with people. You can do a lot more when you were younger physically than you can when you're older. That's just nature. Now, a lot of it depends on if she's a foundation female or a family breeding or a cross. If she's a foundation female and you want to make her part of your family of dogs, you have a tendency to breed those more because you want more of them or more offspring off this particular female. If it's something that's crossed that you're adding to it, even if it's your own female, you may want to add her, every so often to your bloodlines, to your dogs as you move forward. Or you can make an outcross dog a foundation dog too. That's the importance of the females, because like I said, to me they're more important than males for different reasons. It's all in my other videos. You can go back and look at them again if you want. Another factor is, does she have easy or difficult pregnancies, regular pregnancies and deliveries, and regular heat cycles? That's very important. So you won't find that out until you breed her. Just like anything else, they're mammals just like we are. Their pregnancies can go easy, their pregnancies can be difficult sometimes, and a lot of it is the human factor involved. They need to be fed right, they need a well-balanced diet, they need vitamins, minerals, trace elements, protein, fat, free of parasites and disease. They need to be vaccinated and the area clean, and all this stuff involved. That's where the epigenetics comes in. Their living quarters, their how you raise this particular female. It was important, especially with the females, to get them used to the family, being around the family, not be spooked by anything, be comfortable in all kinds of situations during the pregnancy too. We spent almost just as much as time with a pregnant female as we did with the dog and keep, right? Even if they were outside in the yard, you spend a little more time with them. You give them exercise early on in the pregnancy and throughout the pregnancy up until a couple of weeks before they deliver. Have the kids messing with them, and it's a good indication. Female is good with children, human children. She's generally good with her own pups. They're protective and caring. They pay focus and pay a lot of attention to them. So those, meaning they have to be a good mother. For me anyway. Some people, it's not a factor that they think about. It's very important to me, because they're going to be responsible for raising their pups. So if you put them in the position where they're comfortable, have good living quarters, good food, and all that stuff, then there's no reason for them not to be a good mother, because it's a natural instinct in mammals especially. So that's another, could be considered a fault. It's a fault for me if they're not. I wouldn't mess with them. It's just something else you get in there. I don't care how good the dog is. I don't care how good the blood is. I don't care how good she's bred. I don't care who her mama, daddy, brother, sister, champion, grand champion, this and that. And a lot of this stuff people don't agree with me with, but a lot of times they haven't tried it. They haven't done it. It's just their opinion. It's not an educated opinion. They're just saying things that they like and don't like, or things that don't matter. This don't matter. Oh, I seen that. I done this. You got to cover all bases. North, south, east, west. Front, back, side, all around. That way you can have an educated opinion, at least with your own dogs. You tried this, you did this, you saw this, this is what happened, these are the results. That way you know for your own self. That takes years. You can't rush into it. You have to be patient, or at least learn to be patient. Now, another thing is, this female can be used or incorporated later on in your breedings. So that's going to determine how many times you're going to breed her, right? Later on, meaning you can make a mother-son breeding, or a granddam to grandson breeding, aunt to nephew, cousins, like that. If a lot of it too, sometimes, at least with me, depending on the size of the yard you have. So the most I bred any of my females was 3 times. Doesn't seem like a lot, served its purpose, served me. And I had a small yard. So I would say if you have a small yard, you may only need to breed her 2 or 3 times throughout her whole life. If you have a larger yard, then I would say 5 to 8 breedings out of her whole life. And the funny thing with breeding is, especially with females, because you don't get a ton of pups out of them like you do a male, is I expected my females, and males too, but more so the females, to give me something every time I bred them. And within that, that's what determines which ones you're going to breed. So if I got one dog out of a litter, any particular litter, that I could compete with, at least I got something out of it. I may not use that particular individual for breeding, but I didn't lose the whole litter. So that's why I say, I need to get something every time I breed them. Because I wasn't the type to, well, I'm going to try her here, I'm going to try her there, and see if this one doesn't work, I'll try her this way, that way. I don't like that concept. And you don't have to do that. You don't have to find out in that respect, can she throw or not? Meaning this one didn't work, but that one did. Then I tried it over here, those were okay, but over here was better. Right? And at some time, because you're going to have a total loss too many times doing that. So how do you know if she's going to throw? Well, like I mentioned before, she comes from a litter that's consistent, had several dogs in it that were worthy, and her parents back in the day were competed with and are known producers, and the same with the grandparents. Some, if not all, were competed with, and all of them were good producers. Then there's a good chance that the female you chose based on your own standards is going to throw good dogs for you. That's the best way to get it done. There's going to be mishaps, like I said, here and there, like I always say. Don't keep them, don't use them. And so with 2 or 3 breedings, at least 1 or 2 or maybe all 3 of those breedings you made, you're going to have something off of them, more than 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 dogs that you can use to continue your breeding program. They're going to be worthy of breeding. And that's good enough. And I'm speaking if you have a small yard. You have a larger yard, or you have partners or something where you can share dogs or whatever it is, family or whatever. Then you have the option of breeding them more times because you have a place to put the particular pups from all these litters that you're having. You have room for them. You have the money to take care of them. You have the time and money to invest in them for their health and upbringing and maintenance. Having a bunch of dogs and you can't take care of them makes no sense. And it leads to the deterioration of your family of dogs because you spread yourself too thin, dog-wise and money-wise. So, I stopped breeding. I didn't breed my older females especially. And people ask me, well, what age? Generally around 7, 8 years old. They start showing signs of too much wear and tear on them. And it depends on, again, how many times you previously bred them, how big their litters were. It's easier on a female if she has 4 pups compared to if she has 10 pups. There's a lot more wear and tear, a lot more fatigue, a lot more breakdown internally and externally. So you have to measure that, which means you got to pay attention to your dogs, how they feel, how they act. You'll see a deterioration in them as they age. Sometimes it's arthritis, sometimes it's miscarriages, sometimes it's skin problems, no teeth. How's she gonna bite the umbilical cords off? She ain't got no teeth. They're all broken, or they're rotted out or something. Or she had some disease or something that affected her long-term health. So all that stuff has to be taken into consideration. And, at some point, you have to concentrate on her offspring. What daughter of hers are you going to use to replace her? Or daughters? So within that, that's why I say you have to have consistent litters, and the higher percentage ones are better because you have more individuals to choose from. And that's another reason I say, especially with your foundation stuff, what you consider your family of dogs, you need to keep all of them. That way you know which ones are the better or best ones, or which ones you like the best. But it also gives you options of breeding litter mates if you have several of them, in case something happens to one of them. Whether it dies accidentally, whether it's poisoned by a snake, or it's choke on a bone, or get hit by a car, or runs off, or anything could happen to them. Some disease kills them. You have the option of having litter mates. And before somebody says, well, this one's not better than that one, and this one is not as good, and this is the best one, everybody has their favorite. Because I've had dogs on my yard, believe me, and other dogmen come to my yard, and I competed with, whether against them or someone else. I had my favorites. For example, Mr. Rowdy, I talk about him all the time. He was my favorite, right? A friend of mine, fellow competitor and rival and dog man, he liked his brother, Clayton Blood, better. He liked him better. He preferred his style, head dog. So within that, when you have more than 2 or 3 or 4 in a litter that work out, then it's a preference of what you like. And at the same time, those 2 or 3 or 4 have the expectancy or the probability or the potential to all throw good dogs. And I've had that happen to me. I lost this one, that's all right, I got the brother. I lost it, that's all right, I got the sister. This happened, it's a shame, it's sad, whatever it is. They pass away under whatever circumstance. I still have backup from that same litter. And like I said, if you got 3 or 4 of them, 5, 6 of them, you have more than a couple of options. And it also allows you, with line breeding and even inbreeding if you want, to incorporate them in the future breedings in your program. So that sometimes you're breeding to the same dog, sometimes you're breeding to the litter mate, but as you move forward, you have the litter mates spread out throughout your pedigrees, throughout your family of dogs. So you not only bred one male, you bred his brother. And not only did you breed 2 brothers, you bred to the sister. and you bred to the aunt and the father and the mother and the cousin, and you have all those incorporated, all these relatives, and you have crosses in there, and you have looser line breedings and tighter line breeding. It just allows you to keep your foundation going for a longer period of time. So when you're concentrating on the offspring, which at some point you got to do, which one's going to replace her, or which ones? Could be more than one, could be several if you do it right. When you do start planning and using her offspring and her grandchildren, this and that, and her great-grandchildren and her nieces, nephews, you still have her influence in there. And depending how you put your breedings together, you could have her influence on both the top side and the bottom side of the pedigree. You could have it heavy and thick, more loose line, or you could have her in one of your outcross breedings, and you throw that back to your family, meaning you bred her to a outcross male, but you're taking the pups from that and breeding those back to your family. So you could take a son of hers and breed it, and he would be outcrossed, breed it to a daughter of hers who's line bred, and not only do you have 3/4 your stuff with a quarter out, you have half brother, half sister based off of her in that breeding. And the same could be said when you do nephew to aunt, right? You breed one of her nephews to her, right? Meaning breeding her nephew, a son of her brother, back to her. So you have her influence, her brother's influence, because the male you're breeding to, her nephew, is off her brother. And now you have that blood, that family, more concentrated. Not directly inbred, because it's her nephew, but you still have her influence and her brother's influence. And you could take pups from that nephew to aunt breeding and breed one of the pups, or two or whatever, breed it to a cousin, or take a female and breed it to an uncle, or take a female, breed it to the grandfather, breed it to the grandmother, like that. There are different ways to go with it. So, and that's how I kept the influence of several of my dogs. Not several, but the good ones, put it that way. Because again, I didn't have a lot of dogs. But again, the blood's still going. Not here, different country. Almost 40 years now. But that's how I kept it going. And that's what I did. You know, Big Red made a grandfather to granddaughter. I have a pedigree I'm going to put in my new book, and it has Big Red 3 times. It's the grandfather on the top, the great-grandfather on the bottom, great-great-grandfather on the bottom of that. So he's in there 3 times. His influence is heavy in there. And within that, you have his sons, you have his nieces, nephews, because his sister Miss Rowdy is in those pedigrees too. So there's different ways that you can do it and have their influence of that female remain in your breeding program, even though she's either past it or she died from old age, right? And again, that's why it's important, especially when you're first starting out and developing a family of dogs, it's important to keep all the pups so you have hands-on experience with them. You raised them, you know them, you fed them, you worked them, you conditioned them, you taught them. And again, the main thing is now if they work out, you have more options because you have more than just 1 or 2. You may have 5 from a litter that worked out. Then it's up to you to figure out how you're going to breed them. And with 4 or 5 pups, you can breed them all kinds of different ways. And the influence of them will be there for a long time, as well as their parents and grandparents. their influence will be there too. It just keeps moving forward like that. So, how many times should you breed a female? Many times as you deem necessary, but always remember that you have to have standards. There has to be a point where you have to stop because the quality is in decline. And you have some backup because you did breed her 2 or 3 or 4 or 8 times. So you have her offspring and progeny after that. I didn't like to begin too young, like I said. I like to have for them to have some maturity. Just like anything else, you know, you breed them too young, they could cause miscarriages later, weak uterus lining, and all this medical stuff that I don't know shit about, but I know enough to know too young is not good, and too old is not good either. So you have a period of several years where you can utilize her in your breeding program. And in today's atmosphere, it doesn't have to be a ton of time. You don't have to breed her every heat for 10 years straight. And you don't have to get some old female or use one of your old females. Oh, I want to get one more litter out of her before she dies, even though she's too old. That doesn't make sense to me either. If she's yours and you've had her for a long time and she's a good mother and you have several litters off of her, or just a few litters off of her, that's good enough. Don't put any duress on her because she's 12 years old and you want to try and get another litter off of her. And not only did the pups die, but the female dies. Where she could have just lived her life out like you planned to in the first place anyways and let her die of natural causes and she's good. You love her and respect her. That's why doctors tell women don't have kids too late. It's a medical issue. It's the same thing with animals. Could be a medical issue. It's not healthy. And again, if you know how to breed, you ain't lost nothing from her. You still have her in there. So hopefully this helps. Hope you like it. Pros and cons, leave your comments. Thanks again, Coach. Badass jacket. Jesse's gonna love it. Thank you. Another vid coming up soon. And thanks for your support.